Objects at rest will stay in rest. Objects in motion will stay in motion. This is inertia, one of Isaac Newton's laws of motion. It's the formula for calculating how objects will move in our universe. However, simulated physics in video games often seek to replicate such laws to varying degrees, and no game has such a stylish application of these laws than Devil May Cry 4. Movement mechanics are the most fundamental in any game. The way in which a player traverses and interacts with the world is intrinsically tied to how the world is perceived and shapes the way a player approaches any and all situations. Often, when trying to craft in-game physics, developers create oversights in the buildup of momentum. This manifests in mechanics like bunny hopping in games like Half-Life, or even wave dashing in Smash Melee. The universal principle across all of these exploits is Isaac's law of inertia. This law also states that if you're enjoying, you must subscribe. In the instance of bunny hopping, the object in motion is the player, flying at an increased velocity. When an outside force is acting on the player, it will slow them down. In real life, this would be many things, like air resistance and friction with the ground. In game, however, there is no simulated air resistance, and the ground friction can be avoided by timing a jump correctly. This allows for the preservation of momentum, keeping the object in motion. In wave dashing's case, the momentum from an air dash is transferred to the ground, allowing for quicker and more precise sliding movements. The friction from the ground slows the player, but applying the increased acceleration from air dashing to the varying frictions of different characters can lead to a variety of very different and useful setups. The difference here is, in real life, there isn't really any easy way to build acceleration in the air, and the ground is usually not so frictionless. In the Devil May Cry games, player movement is all about the moveset of the characters. Generally, a wide variety of playstyles and approaches can be gleaned from even a simple moveset, but when this is applied to the insane amount of combinations and moves that any one character may have, it becomes all about player expression. In most instances, players tend to not even walk around normally at all, opting to use moves specifically designed to close gaps while looking stylish. For instance, using Trickster or Stinger to close a gap. Earlier iterations in the series started this mindset, games like Devil May Cry 3 building the framework for what others would master. DMC4 specifically, being the troubled child of the good games in the series, would accidentally create its own abuse of its in-game physics. As it turns out, DMC4 has a rather advanced form of inertia, similar to games with bunny hopping. However, in this game, it's all about redirecting momentum as opposed to preserving it.
What'd you say?
Once you stop doing attacks that preserve this momentum, it's all over. But if you keep chaining them, then the sky star's the limit. It wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't relate it somehow to speedrunning, so here it is. DMC4 has some of the coolest applications of physics abuses for speedrunning skips in gaming. Redirecting your inertia and doing very specific moves, you can scale to insane heights. Inertia transfers energy to any direction, including vertically. Chaining attacks close enough together, you can preserve this momentum and lead to some amazing results. Let's start basic. In Chapter 10, there is a spinning blade in the room that Nero can actually fly right across, skipping the combat below. In this instance, you start with a level 3 Exceed High Roller to launch him above the blades. Then you start a Caliber to gain distance across the room, turning around afterwards and slashing to maintain height. From here, the player will release a charge shot to give them momentum in the backwards direction. Slashing immediately afterward will keep this momentum through the air. Mid-slash, another charge shot is charged and released, starting the momentum once again. This can be looped to fly across the arena and over the blades, losing minimal height. The reason this works is because Nero floats in the air while slashing, losing minimal height, but the momentum from the charge shot is stored in the backwards direction. This skip can also be done with Virgil using similar methods. Setting up on this wall, the player can double jump and use Virgil's very own version of roulette spin to gain even more height. From there, they build momentum with 3 devil-triggered stingers to preserve this momentum with roulette spins, elegantly gliding over this otherwise required fight. Now for a more technical application. On Mission 16, Dante can perform a set of moves to fly right through the ceiling at the beginning of the level, skipping several minutes worth of gameplay. This is called gas skip. In order to perform this trick, Dante is going to be using a combat adjudicator in the room to do some lock-on based attacks. Firstly, the player uses high time to launch the enemy and then prop shredder to relaunch it, making sure it's as high in the air as possible. This is where the inertia starts. Then the player switches to Trickster and uses Trick Up to teleport to the combat adjudicator above him, building momentum vertically. Then this momentum can be stored for the rest of the combo. After the teleport, Dante then switches to Gunslinger and uses Rainstorm. But Rainstorm only maintains this momentum for the first part of the animation, meaning we must use as little Rainstorm as possible. Rainstorm is then cancelled with a jump. Only the beginning part of the air hike is actually maintaining momentum as well, so the vertical part of the jump is cancelled with another Rainstorm. This is when Dante activates Devil Trigger to get a triple jump, maintaining this momentum one more time. After the next Rainstorm, we use Skystar to ride up this pipe, increasing our vertical momentum slightly. Then 2 more trick ups are done. While these tricks don't increase our vertical momentum, they do carry that momentum that was gained from the initial trick. Then we finally switch to Gunslinger and do Fireworks, giving us the last little bit of vertical height that we need to clip to the ceiling and skip most of the level. This string is not super hard to perform in and of itself, but what makes it really difficult is the timing of the attacks must be correct in order to carry the momentum from the bottom all the way to the top. Even if the moves are done in the right order, if it isn't preserving the inertia, it won't go high enough. The craziest part is this is a super basic, bare bones application of inertia. Speedrunners are used to doing what is most optimal, removing small idiosyncratic movements as much as possible, all for the sake of speed. But style players are not beholden to a timer, so they can toy with their food all they want. And this toying is where inertia really comes out to play. First, I'll show it off. Then I'll break down what the hell is going on here. First off, DK uses Snatch to pull the enemy closer and cause him to bounce a bit. Then he starts a shuffle and cancels it with a jump. From there he can do a caliber to start his inertia. Since it doesn't hit, Nero's momentum is preserved when he jump cancels, and DK redirects this momentum back towards where he came from to set up a charge shot cancel. When he lands, the inertia is killed, but he can set up a new string with high time into a reverse shuffle to gain some distance for another caliber. This time, the attack actually hits and causes DK to lose all inertia. He then slams to the ground and waits for his charge shot time bomb to go off. This relaunches the enemy in the air. This sets him up perfectly to caliber underneath the Scarecrow and jump cancel into the next string of attacks. After a few stylish beatdowns, DK decides he wants to change directions, and this is where he's going to do something really special. While he charges his charge shot, DK does a caliber at a slight off angle to the enemy. This causes the attack to whiff. This is actually intentional so that he can maintain the inertia generated by caliber and redirect it to move through the air around the enemy. Once he's where he wants to be, DK crushes the Scarecrow's spirit once again, planting his charge shot for later. He then buys time till it's about to explode and sends the enemy towards the ground, so he can caliber over top of him, starting the inertia. As he passes over, the time bomb goes off, relaunching the Scarecrow behind DK. This is where DK will activate Nero's Devil Trigger, canceling the caliber but maintaining the inertia. He launches the Scarecrow again. Now that the inertia from the caliber has been transferred through Devil Trigger, DK uses it to go back underneath the enemy and reverses a roulette spin into a charge shot to send the enemy flying. This is just an example of a few ways that inertia can vastly expand the possibilities when it comes to a playstyle in DMC4. And Nero isn't even the most versatile character in that regard. The best part about inertia in DMC4 is it applies to every character in the same manner. However, each character's moveset interacts with inertia differently. For example, Dante's trick builds a large amount of inertia towards the enemy, and his Rainstorm attack is really good at preserving this momentum. But his Darkslayer slash completely cancels all momentum, killing any inertia built. With Virgil, Stinger creates inertia, while Judgment Gut can ride this inertia through a trick, but Lunar Phase kills all inertia. Every character has a multitude of moves that can build, preserve, and destroy inertia. The real beauty comes from finding the right balance across all three to do some really crazy shit like this. Even though this property applies equally across all characters, this does not mean that all characters are created equal. Dante is by far the most complex character in the game, even if you measure just by the amount of moves possible. But when inertia is added on top,
let's welcome chaos.
Dante's styles enable him to do many things, but often the least used is Royal Guard, because of its restrictive utility. That is, until you learn how to guard fly. Guard flying is an advanced technique exclusive to Devil May Cry 4. You may have seen the god gamer himself, Dongaree, doing this when styling on some bosses, flying through the air like a crazy, wacky wahoo pizza man that he really is. What's going on here is that the inertia built up from moves like Skystar or Full House are buffered through an enemy step or jump cancel, and immediately Rail Guard is held and a direction is input. This basically stores all of the inertia from the previous move and redirects it anywhere the player chooses. This can be redirected several times by doing a double or even triple jump and holding guard again. This is the secret behind Master Dongaree's flying abilities. But it's not just useful on bosses. Being able to traverse quickly through the air can create a near infinite amount of setups for interesting combos. To show you what I mean, DK is back at it again with another brief combo, and this time let's see if you can spot the guard flying. Did you spot when DK did a guard fly? He did it 3 times. Once here, here, and here. Now let's go through the rest of the combo and explain exactly what's going on here. From the start, DK roughs up the Mega Scarecrow a bit, toying with his food if you will. He occasionally starts oscillating in the air backwards and forwards towards the enemy, jump canceling and directing his inertia backwards then forwards again. This is just to add a bit of flair to the combat and can be used to more precisely attack certain parts of the hitbox on certain attacks. He uses this to scale the height of his jump cancels until he is practically standing right on top of the Mega Scarecrow. This is where he takes the opportunity to switch back and forth over the top of the Mega. By using Skystar, he builds inertia and then redirects it back over the top with a jump cancel into Rainstorm. This seamlessly gets him from the right back to the left and then back again with no downtime. Immediately after he does this, he does a rave to stun the Mega and switches to Trickster. The Skystar that falls will be used to guard fly away from the Mega Scarecrow, so that DK can return to the ground fast without moving the enemy. The Helmbreaker to the ground transfers the inertia from before, and this is strewn across several attacks including Mustang, the move where he runs up the enemy. This is immediately jump canceled and the momentum is directed away from the enemy. He even builds up inertia with a Full House and sends it downwards with a ground pound and guard flies out of it so he doesn't knock the enemy away. This is when DK places a Lucifer Spike at the Mega Scarecrow to set up for a later trick. Shortly after, he uses Skystar to build inertia, then uses that momentum to fireworks over the top, setting up for what, in my opinion, is the coolest way to set up a guard fly. While some of the attacks that build inertia may be obvious, the attacks that store it may surprise you. Basically, if you don't leave any gap between commands, most attacks will maintain inertia, even when on the ground. Here DK sets up a dive kick to start inertia, then he buffers a single punch to maintain it across to the next move. When in Devil Trigger, you can do a super long kick 13 string with one input, and this attack launches both Dante and the Mega Scarecrow. It also preserves inertia from the dive kick. Since they're so close together, DK can immediately guard fly out of this, using the momentum gained from the dive kick and redirecting it with a double jump to go right underneath the Mega while it is flying through the air. DK then chases the Mega into the air and follows it down. But DK makes a mistake here. Originally, the Lucifer Spike was supposed to explode after the enemy hit the ground, but DK spent too long in the air and it sent the Mega flying. DK is now going to demonstrate how you can use inertia to fix errors like this. First, he stops the enemy in the air with a single shot so it doesn't fly too far away. Then he slowly redirects his inertia, bouncing off the Mega while rotating around it. This is so he can set up for a chain that he has planned that will only work if he's standing directly in front of the enemy. Once he gets there, he then launches the enemy with a super cool ecstasy shotgun launcher and finishes the combo. Wow, that was a lot to explain. But the basics boil down to the three main principles of inertia: moves that build momentum, moves that carry momentum, and moves that stop momentum. There is a never-ending amount of combinations and variations of moves that can be arranged in a system like this, and with it being on top of an already insanely deep combat system, you can really see how crazy it can get. Unfortunately, DMC5 seems to have almost completely removed such systems, leading many to the conclusion that it was indeed totally an accident in the first place. These abuses of the physics engine always raise the skill ceiling and create huge cult followings around the mechanics that it produces. There is a reason Smash Melee and CS Surfing are still so popular. So too for Devil May Cry 4. Personally, my favorite games to watch players express themselves in are those that have crazy movement systems, and usually it has to do with how the simulated physics deal with the problem of inertia. Whether it's bunny hopping, yeet hooking, wave dashing, or guard flying, the unintended consequences of these physics systems are almost always way cooler than the ones that are intended. And I wish more games would take the risk to implement them intentionally. Until then, I love you guys lots and stay stylish. A huge shout out to my patrons who support me so dearly, as well as to all the DMC players who allowed me to use footage for this video. Especially Delusionary Killer, who helped write the script and record special footage just for this video. If you want any more epic DMC style play, there's a playlist on DK's YouTube channel with just about every style video ever made. I'll put a link in the description.